Now, what I saw was not ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
What I saw was trauma.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Truth Revealed podcast,
What up?
where we relate in order to reconcile as we reveal God's truth. Today, we are so elated to have our special guest with us, Shameca Ricks.
Yeah.
Yay! All right. So today we are talking about something that's very sensitive and heavy, but definitely just want to bring awareness to the topic of mental health. It's always our endeavor to have relevant conversation, especially conversations that impact our culture.
Yes.
And so we thought it would be so befitting to discuss mental health awareness, as well as have someone who is an expert in the field, who has clinical background that can give us more insight. And so that's why we've invited our very good friend, Shameca Ricks.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
so thank you for coming and being a part.
You.
So I just wanted to start off by just giving you guys a little brief history about mental health awareness. Back in as early as 1949, which this was news to me, the Mental Health America Association decided to have what they call, or what we recognize now as Mental Health Awareness Month. So this is something that's very, very old, and just recognizing it within our country. It was very kind of daunting to look at some of the statistics. I'm just trying to think of a good word when we think about mental health in America. So I just want to read out some of the things that I was able to find. And this information came from the National Alliance of Mental Health. And we'll put all of this information in our show notes for those of you who may want to go back and reference this information. First thing is one out of five people experience mental health, which is roughly around 43.8 million people. That's a lot of people.
It is. Yeah.
1 in 25 adults in the United States have a serious mental health diagnosis. And serious meaning it kind of may prohibit them from just going about their daily functions. 1 in 6 youth in the U.S. from the ages of 6 to 17 also experience a mental health disorder. So, these numbers are pretty staggering. 50% of mental health disorders or diagnosis begin at the age of 14, and 75% at the age of 24.
Wow.
And last but certainly not least, suicide is the second leading cause of death among those in between 10 to 34. So I think that's just a Selah moment. When so many people are dying of so many different things. And when I read that, I was so surprised, because we hear so much about cancer and about all these other medical issues that cause death on an annual basis. But I was surprised to hear that suicide was the second leading.
Wow.
So I think that this is definitely I know that this is a topic that needs to be on the hearts of the people, the church, regular people, the those in government, social justice, all of this stuff. It is so impactful. And so we definitely wanted to just have someone on, because we don't know everything, but we wanted to have someone on who's actually working in this field, who has devoted, her life to servicing those individuals who may suffer from mental health. And one of the things that the Mental Health Association or organization stated when they, decided to come up with this awareness month is to, one, get the conversation started about mental health, to, you know, try to knock down the stigmas that are associated with it. And then ultimately, and really most importantly, to help people and let people know that there is help, and getting people comfortable about speaking out about it.
Yeah.
So at this time, I just want to take this time to introduce a
Yay.
very, very good friend.
Yes. And
The
one of our number one fans, I might add.
Yes.
Yeah.
From fans to supporters.
Absolutely.
She needs the top fan
I'm
icon.
telling you. Yes.
I love it. I love you all.
So we met, and I'm saying we because she's all our friends.
Yeah.
We all met Shameca, like Holly and April, myself. We all met on the campus of UNC Charlotte.
Yeah.
We all were a part of the cultural choir, aka gospel
COS.
choir.
Yes.
COS in the house. And you know, you're talking about,
Mhm.
I came on campus in 97. I think Shameca and Holly were there in 96.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is what, 2 decades of friendship.
Man.
Yes.
That's
Long time.
I'm very elated by that, because I don't use the word friend lightly.
Right.
So to be able to say that you've known someone for 20 years, you know, we went through
Right.
some life experiences
Yes,
together.
Lord.
We have been there for each other. We could have a whole podcast talking about how we have been there and the things that we've
My
experienced.
goodness.
So, you know, as Shameca has matriculated in her career and went on and, you know, further her education, she's always been so true to who she was when I first met her.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that says a lot about her character, because sometimes when people matriculate in life, no one is who they were when we were 17 and 18.
Mm-hmm.
But one of that I've always honored about Shameca is she has always remained consistent with who she is. And so I think that's just awesome. And I'm so glad, and we're all so glad that she's a part of our lives and ultimately a part of this conversation. So Shameca's going to go into some telling us a little bit more about herself. I did want to highlight, and this also will be in our show notes, that Shameca has her own business. It's called Well Life Counseling and Spiritual Center, and she is very qualified to discuss these topics that we're going to dive into, being that she holds a LCSW, which is she's a licensed clinical social worker. She also holds the LCAS, which is a licensed clinical addiction substance
Specialist.
Specialist. I got it right. So, and the reason why I just wanted to go ahead and put that out there is because she's not just somebody talking. She's someone who's talking, and she's someone who's qualified to talk about this topic.
Yeah.
She's doing the work. And so we applaud you, Shameca.
Yes.
You're needed, and we appreciate
Yes,
you
Lord.
Very much.
So we just want you to give us a little insight about what caused you to go this route. Now, I remember in school you working with gerontology, and I don't even remember what your undergrad major is. I remember you working at the nursing home up the street from the school. So I know you've
and the
always
stories that you had.
and the stories.
Get me out of here, honey. To be one of them.
You remember my little man?
Yeah. So I knew you always had a heart for people, but what caused you to take this turn, and maybe not a turn for you, but a turn for us, and go furthering yourself as far as this educational choice?
Right. Well, first, I just want to say thank you, ladies, for having me. Yes, I am your number one fan. I love this podcast. It is so necessary and needed for such a time as this. And I continue to pray God's blessings upon you, ladies, and everything that your hand touches.
Thank you.
So I want to say you're absolutely correct. I did, I majored in psychology with the concentration in gerontology when I was at UNC Charlotte. And I did have a client that I used to work with and bring to church with me and things like that from the adult daycare center that I used to work at. But once I graduated, I actually got into long-term care, nursing homes, and rehabilitation centers, and kind of worked worked my way up through the ranks to become a social worker. And after about 2 years, I want to say, I actually was promoted to a director of social services within the nursing home facilities and things like that. So I did that for approximately 9 years.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, so in that, you do see a lot of death and dying. You work with hospice really closely, work with the families and end of life care decision making, things of that nature. But what happened after about 9 years, I hit a brick wall and end up burning out, crashing, so to speak. I did not really know what was wrong at that time. I just threw my hands up and I was just like, I've had enough. And so I ended up moving back to Rocky Mount. I want to say maybe about, I want to say it was probably about 10 years ago now.
Okay.
And but things got progressively worse for me. I started feeling very fatigued. I was crying uncontrollably. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus. I couldn't sit still long enough to actually work. So I was unemployed there for a while. And I remember sitting in my chair in my room and having thoughts of death, that maybe things would be better if I was not here. And I was like, this is not normal. So I believe that it was through divine intervention. While I was sitting there in my room crying, the Lord spoke to me and said, get the yellow pages. Now, this was when we still had
Yellow pages.
You're telling your age. No,
I know, right? So I went and got the yellow pages. Now, mind you, I didn't have no insurance, no anything at the time, but I went and got the yellow pages. And when I opened the book up, it landed on mental health.
Wow.
And at that time, there was something called the Beacon Center, and that was a place where you would call to get referred to mental health services. So I called the number. They gave me a place to go, and I went. And I spent a whole year in counseling myself. A whole year.
Wow.
And actually did not know, but once I got into mental health services, I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression.
Wow.
And it was so severe to the point where I did have to start medication to manage the anxiety and the depressive symptoms. But as I matriculated through that year, I became clear on my purpose. And I was sitting in session one day, and the Lord spoke to me and said, go back to school. Because I was in a in-between place. I was just out there, I wasn't working. I was back in Rocky Mount. I felt like I was, Dorothy in Kansas, because I spent my whole life, adult life, in Charlotte.
Wow.
Here I am looking at cows and cornfields.
Right. Welcome to Rocky Mount.
Yes. So I was just kind of floundering around, didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. And that's when the Lord spoke to me and said, go back to school. And I didn't have the confidence. I'm like, oh, I've been through so much. I can't think anymore. I've been out of school for so long. And I talked to my mom about it, and she was like, well, if you've done it before, you can do it again.
Do it again.
Come on, Mama.
And she just instilled the word in me. She reminded me of who I was, and I stepped out on faith, y'all, and took off from there.
Wow. Awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's what led me here. And that's why I believe in mental health. I know that mental health is real.
Yeah.
And that if it worked for me, that I know that it can work for anybody.
Amen.
Awesome.
Amen.
Awesome.
And I think it's so awesome too, Shameca, that you know, a lot of times there's so much stigma around the subject of mental health, and
Yes.
definitely stigma within the Black culture. And it's funny, as I was listening to your story and listening to your testimony, you never said anything about hesitation, about the stigma. Because I think when you're in that place of needing help, don't nobody care what
Yes.
anybody else thinks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was
Right.
like you said, you opened up the page, there was a beacon, you called the number. It was no hesitation of thought. And
Mm-mm.
No.
I wonder how many more people would have had the turnaround if they weren't so concerned about, what
What
everyone
it looks
else would
like.
think
Yeah.
and
Right.
how it
Right.
appears.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm so
And see,
glad that you did that.
but
Yes.
the
Yeah.
thing about it is that most people don't turn to mental health until they hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like me, I
Mm-hmm.
had no knowledge, even though I had a degree, it taught me nothing about mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Psychology didn't teach me about mental health. Social work actually taught me about
No,
mental health.
mental health. Yeah.
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 Wow.
So I had knowledge of how the brain works and all of that stuff, psychopaths, this theory and that theory, but
Mm-hmm.
it didn't teach me about what mental health was.
Wow.
So I didn't know what was going on. And that's the
Mm.
purpose. And I'm glad for you all bringing awareness to it. So if we have access to information to identify sooner
Right.
Mm-hmm.
what the challenges are, what's really going on with us, because the earlier we intervene, the better the outcome is for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shameka,
Awesome.
tell us about Well Life Counseling and Spiritual Center.
Okay, Well Life Counseling and Spiritual Center. We are a private practice mental health agency. We started in 2016, and I am the CEO and clinical director. And I provide mental health counseling to children, adults, and couples.
Mm.
So, ranging from anxiety, depression, mood disorders,
Wow.
the LGBT community, those types of issues,
Mm-hmm.
as well as marital counseling, relationship counseling.
Awesome.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
Mhm.
So you basically got everything covered.
Yes, yes. Yes, I've been in the field now long enough to have worked with pretty much every population
Wow. From the
out
young to
there
the
now.
old.
So, yes.
Yeah.
So I've worked
I'm
with pretty much everything in mental health.
I'm
Wow.
glad you said that, because I think that's a good segue. Because one of the things, and Holly and April definitely jump in. One of
Mm-hmm.
the things that we were wanting to talk about, as it is, in bringing awareness, and
Mhm.
and especially since you have worked with the complete gamut of the population, is Rona.
Mm,
Ah,
So
yeah.
Rona here,
yes.
and I know just yesterday I was after church, went out and exercise, rode the bike or whatever, and ran into a church member that I hadn't seen in a while. And she kind of opened up and shared that she had, when she goes out, she said she goes out, but when she goes out, that she kind of, basically, she has a little bit of anxiety about spaces if it gets too crowded. And
Right.
I don't know if that's something that she may have dealt with prior to, but I know that a lot of people have kind of been talking about that anxiety component with COVID and the restrictions and the uncertainty and et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So I would be interested to know, from your line of work, have you seen an uptick in, cases? Have you seen more of an influx to your to Well Life, with people just trying to process all of what's going on with coronavirus?
Yes, definitely an increase in anxiety and depression. Not only from experiencing the impact of RONAS, but also the racial climate
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well. people are having a very difficult time processing that. But since you asked specifically about the impact of COVID-19, I have a little information here that I want to give to the audience.
Yeah.
So in young children and adolescents, the pandemic and the lockdown has had a great impact on the emotional and social development of young children, because as you all know, we're socially distancing, children are not going to school.
Yeah.
And during adolescence, that's the time when it's all about your friends and being accepted by your peer groups. So in one of the preliminary studies being conducted on the pandemic, it was found that younger children from the age of 3 to 6 years old, were more likely to manifest symptoms of clinginess, fear of family members being infected, and separation anxiety.
Wow.
Children from age 6 to 18 demonstrate more inattentiveness, difficulty focusing and concentrating, and irritability. So also disturbance in their sleep patterns, nightmares. And this is the interesting thing about this, is that more children are operating in survival mode.
Wow.
So behaviors such as hoarding, there's been an increase in hoarding behavior amongst children. So, think about it. You could find paper towels, you couldn't find Lysol, you couldn't find anything. So that has, witnessing the shelves being empty for children, they're operating in survival mode. So they're hoarding things now. So
That's crazy.
It's been a lot. The children with special needs have been impacted. They don't have access to the professional services that they need. They lack social skills training. And the isolation and the lack of social skills training, they're not going to school. Children with special needs are more likely to have temper tantrums, angry outbursts, conflicts with their parents and their siblings. Also, in adolescence, we see an uptick on compulsive internet usage.
Yes, they also do.
Kids are at home, spending more time at home. They're confined, so we see an increase in compulsive internet usage, and not only compulsive internet usage, but the usage of objectionable content. So they're, more likely to engage in watching pornography or as well as other things on the internet that, is inappropriate for children. So it's been staggering what kids have been experiencing since the pandemic. So it's a lot.
Okay. I'm so glad you talked about the kids and that thing. That is very interesting. And some of that I can identify with, because, I got my two boys, they're 8 and 13.
The parents never know the ages. It's all right.
But okay. So what I want to know, Shameca, now we know that, if you have access, especially now where we're Zoom calling everything, and it's actually, I think, a good thing that we're learning the things you don't have to do in person, but you can still get done.
Right.
But, other than coming to your place for counseling, what are some things would you suggest that some parents just cease and desist doing or start doing right now in their homes? I feel like we have a responsibility, and I'm not making the parents to feel guilty.
Right.
But I'm gonna give an example. less new. So if I keep it on CNN all day long, just all day long, my children are in here, and that's all I play. I can, I have that going, and they are consuming.
Right.
So that's one thing that I could stop. So do you have any practical things that, like, hey, yes, make an appointment, but parents, guardians, whoever you are that got children in your care, that this is affecting, what can we cease and desist, and what are some practical things that maybe we can start doing?
Okay, great question, April. Well, for one, my recommendation to parents would be provide structure. Set a time where you, just like if you were going to school, and you were going to work, there's a time that you get up in the morning, you have, your bath, shower, whatever, you have breakfast, and then you do schoolwork. So the kid's day needs to be structured, because what I'm finding is, with the lack of structure, kids are less able to learn. They're not sleeping at night.
Wow.
On the internet, on their devices all night long, because they can sleep into whatever time, and check in on the computer whatever time they wake up or get ready to.
Yeah.
So providing structure so that the children can have a routine and know what to expect every day, so that you don't have to fight with your children due to lack of structure.
I just got convicted then. Feel that, parents. You hear what I say? Feel every bit of that, parents. You received this from the woman of God, okay?
Yes.
Right. It's a whole
girl, that
word.
just hit me right in my stomach. I was just like, oh.
Yes, structure.
Yeah. Kind of gotten out of some structural things, but continue.
Yes. Then, set limits on screen time.
Yeah.
Gotta set limits on screen time. This may be a little controversial, but I don't think, children need cell phones and iPads, and because there is so much out there on the internet.
Yes.
If you're not going to supervise what your children are consuming, you better believe they're going somewhere that they don't need to be going. It's so easy now to do it. So set limits on screen time. Allow your children to go outside and play. Because that energy has to go somewhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're still kids.
Yes, they are.
So if they have all of this energy, they're going to be bouncing off the walls. So you gotta provide an outlet for children to play. Also, reach out for help, because this new math and all of this
Lord. Why they can't just do it
kids,
the old way?
Carry the one.
Oh, I'm telling you. Jesus. Making stuff complicated.
They have to write out these tables and all this
ridiculous.
Kind of
Girl, I done re-traumatized my child. I was like, they didn't teach you what an array was. So you mean to tell me they asked you to do an array and they didn't teach you an array? And he was like, no, we didn't talk about that. I said, I don't believe you.
I'm trying to tell you.
I'm up there just traumatizing the baby.
Poor Marky. We gonna get him connected to Will Light.
Right. So stay engaged with the school system. Stay engaged, communicate, reach out for help. If you don't know exactly how to help your children, reach out. Yeah. And then also, I want to encourage parents that you still have to take care of yourselves too. You have to maintain your own mental health as well. So schedule time in to do something that recharges you, that refreshes you, that gives you a sense of rejuvenation, that includes only you, and spend that time pouring back into yourselves so that you can face the week and be a blessing to your family. But you got to take care of you first.
Wow.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That
And I,
is
you
so
know,
true.
I noticed too, and I do never try to self-diagnose, and I'm not saying this wrong with my child, but I can guarantee you also some eating disorders probably isn't affecting kids
Mm.
too. And what I
Mhm.
mean by that, I hate to use the big word disorder, but I've even noticed I've had to get my own child, like he just wants to eat and eat and eat, the littlest one. And I
Right.
Mm.
know he's bored. He doesn't know what to do
Mm.
with himself.
Yes.
You know, after we get off the Zoom class and after I work with him with the homework, you know, it's just, I mean, can I have that? I need to get that. You know, he's climbing up on the thing, going in the cabinet. I was like, but since when you don't ask me permission, you know,
Mhm.
just,
Mm.
you know, and so I know that even that's an effect, you know, we might
Right.
take that lightly, especially Lord, us church folk, praise God, because we overeat anyway.
Yes.
But anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. But thank you so much for that, Shameca. That was perfectly answered.
Yeah.
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 And
So
I,
that
oh, yeah.
exercise is gonna help with the, the desire to eat
Yes,
out
going
more.
outside and get
Yes.
That's good. That's
Mm.
good.
And I was going to
Yeah.
ask a question, and like even before COVID and all of the racial tension, there was a rise in suicide and depression amongst young people. What do you
Right.
feel is at the root of that? Because not
Mhm.
to be overly insensitive, but I
Right.
remember a time that when I was growing up, bullying was just a part of childhood. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I was put in
Yeah.
headlocks many times.
you know what I'm saying? And so it just seems like it's kind of, just taken a ugly turn like over the years as it relates
Yeah.
to, not that anybody should be bullied. I'm not saying that,
Right.
but
Right.
I'm
Right.
just saying it seems like there is like a oversensitivity, or am I a way off? What do you think?
What I have thought about this too,
Okay.
because the non-professional me was like, oh Lord, these kids can't take nothing.
Nothing.
If they was growing up with a broom across their head,
Oh
I
my
know. I
It's
know.
true. It's true.
Shoot a switch, all kinds of things.
I told my mama I was abused after I finished. When I first started working at DSS, I came home one day and was like, you abused me, right? And she was like, whatever. Like, for real.
You just had to take it and move on.
and
Move
leave.
on.
But then so that's the non-professionals. I'm like, wow, these children they can't endure anything. But
Yeah.
then the professional side of me really does a critical analysis.
Okay.
Mhm.
you know and what I'm thinking is that now is not only one way to bully. You got
Mhm.
11 different ways to bully.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Yep.
If you
Mm.
didn't see Ray,
Right. You got a
he
break.
couldn't bully you.
Right.
But now you
Yeah.
got social media attacks
Yep.
and campaigns
Got
out
you.
against, it's almost like, a hit has been put out on these kids, and
Yeah.
they're stalked on social media,
Yeah.
and the
Wow.
attacks are becoming more vicious
Mhm.
Mm.
and more personal. And
Mm.
I have had kids actually, um, they're stalkers and those kids that are bullying them, they're releasing private
Oh,
information
wow.
um, on the internet
Vicious.
about these kids.
Mm.
They're pulling up to their homes with guns and knives and
What?
What?
Okay.
See,
Are we
yes.
talking
Okay.
about
this is on
teenagers,
another
I
level
Shameca?
I
then.
get it.
Yes,
Okay,
we're
this
talking
on
about
another level.
teenagers.
Teenagers.
We
Yeah,
Wow.
was we was just fist fighting back then. So my lord, this is on another level.
And like you
but
said, when
but
I got away from
yes,
Kiki, then I ain't had to see Kiki till I saw Kiki on the next
Yeah.
time.
right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it has definitely gone to another level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can't
Mm.
and I'm not gonna say, if you're on social media, there's no escape.
That's right.
Right.
Wow.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
that
And
is
then
true.
they're sharing it and sharing it and
And
sharing it
sharing it.
and
Mm.
sharing it. So
Wow.
I think that has complicated, social media has complicated the lives of kids and
Yeah.
children.
Yes.
Wow.
So
Mm.
Yes.
That's one thing that I think that has contributed to the increase in mental health in kids and teenagers. Number two, look at the climate that we're living in now.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't seen anything like this in our lifetime anyway.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
You know, we went from almost, witnessing the first Black president to,
Witnessing what we're witnessing.
what we're witnessing now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now, you're seeing it recycled on the media over and over
Right.
and over again.
Right.
And
Yes.
it's almost this fear that is in this climate
Yes.
that
Yeah.
is
It
running
is.
rampant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the parents that come in fear of their Black sons, that something is going to happen to them. They're trying to get through it and figure out, what can I do to protect my son?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of fear and anxiety just in the atmosphere,
It is.
in
Yeah.
society, and then the media is perpetuating it, and then it's programming, it's mental programming.
That's right.
So we're being programmed to fear on top of that.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
So I think it's a lot of factors. We can romanticize old school, but this ain't old school.
This ain't
That's
old
right.
school. This is not it.
School.
It's a new day.
It's a new
It
day.
is. It is.
You're right.
Shameca,
Yeah.
I want to hit on your one of your designations, your LCAS, because I know you said you deal with substance abuse and addiction. Kind of along the same line, same question. Have you seen an increase in that? And the reason why I'm asking that is because I remember, months ago when everything was being shut down, and they were determining what was essential and what wasn't.
Right.
Let me tell you, the line I saw around the ABC store, the alphabet store.
Ooh.
Oh yes.
I was
Trying
like,
to cope.
look, they was like, we're not
Yes.
shutting that down.
They
Right.
know something. The one thing. And they
So
know
sad.
Right.
The alcohol economy is thriving. Huh?
I'm telling you.
Along with the hand sanitizer and everything else.
Right, exactly.
Which
And
I learned we ain't supposed to be using, but keep going.
You know what? Stop.
You know what?
That's a segue on something else. But go ahead.
That's totally a sidebar. But I was thinking about
Absolutely.
that, I was thinking about, that whole coping component and how people are coping, and God knows what would have happened if the alphabet store wasn't deemed essential. So I heard someone was saying, and this is why I want to talk to you, the professional, that and we know who they are,
Right.
But what I heard was that they did not want to shut down the alphabet store due to there being an increase in withdrawals of people not, who may be alcoholics and things of that nature, and that causing them to have to go to the hospitals. And now this is when everything first happened. This is just a theory that I heard.
Okay.
But I thought it was interesting because I was like, well, I just thought they just kept it open because of money. Like I didn't even go that deep about withdrawals. I didn't think that either. But people. These are some of the things that are floating around.
Right.
So as a professional in this arena, and having expertise, have you obviously you probably have seen that increase with your clients that may struggle with addiction?
Yes, absolutely. And I know in rural North Carolina, it's the access to care in our rural areas is still poor. There's nowhere to go in Rocky Mount other than the psych hospital, the one that we have. You go to the psych hospital for everything, for mental health, for substance abuse, detox. I had one of my clients call it the resort. He goes to the resort every so often to get a break,
Wow.
just to get a break from life.
Mm.
And there should be more services available for
Mm.
mental health. It should be more access to medical services and medical treatment for mental health. But there isn't. So we do
Mm.
what we can to send people to where there is help, but we definitely need more funding for mental health, because
Right, right.
it's not a lot out here for mental health or substance abuse treatment.
Wow.
Shameca, do you feel like they cross over? Like when I did social work, and even though it was CPS, when I would meet parents that dealt with addiction, whether it be drugs or, alcoholism, when I would start digging a little deeper and getting to know more of them, there were traumatic things that had happened in their
Mm.
past.
Right.
Do you feel like they cross over where mental health yields to addiction, or addiction is
Mm.
due to mental health?
Well, it can flow both ways.
Right.
That's what we call a co-occurring condition, or we call it comorbidity.
Mm-hmm.
So, substance abuse, it also has a genetic component to it as well.
Mm.
Some people turn to using drugs and alcohol to cope with mental health symptoms, anxiety, depression,
Yeah.
insomnia. A lot of my clients have told me, well, it started out drinking to put me to sleep because I couldn't
Mm.
sleep at night. And it
Wow.
turned into an addiction. And then
Wow.
some people who have turned to substance abuse don't know they have an underlying mental health condition.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
Got you.
And so oftentimes they're turning to substances to cope with life and cope with their inability to manage the
Mm.
mental health disorder or
Wow.
stress or whatever it is that they are experiencing.
Wow. Mm.
So it can go both ways.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mhm, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I wanted
Self-medicating.
to I wanted to kind of shift the conversation a little bit. We're going to put this clip in our show notes for our listeners, but we all watched the clip with Dr. Umar Johnson, and I'm kind of backtracking a little bit because you did kind of touch on children and mental health, but anytime you have a topic such as mental health, it can be so broad and you can get so many
Right.
varying
Yeah.
opinions. And so Dr. Umar has an opinion, just like we all do. But
Right.
one of the things that he was talking about was prison to pipeline, as
Yeah.
it pertains to our, specifically our young Black boys. Um, he has an opinion and a theory that the whole ADHD,
Mm.
ADD diagnosis was basically a form of segregating the Caucasian children from the African American children, and what has been classified as ADD, ADHD may really just be gifted and mental
Mm.
intelligence, and very different viewpoints. And I respect everybody's viewpoint, but as a professional, I think he's a psychologist. But
Mhm.
as a professional in this field, when you're working with children who have this ADD and ADHD, and it's kind of like what Holly was saying. I remember, we're all in the same age bracket. I remember going to school, and there was a couple of hype kids in the classroom, but they were just hype kids in the
Mm-hmm.
classroom. Like
Yep.
I don't remember
Mhm.
Everybody having a
kids being on,
diagnosis.
yeah,
Right.
kids being on Ritalin, and yeah, it's just very uncommon. Like I'm like, kind of
Right.
Yep.
like what you were saying initially,
Mhm.
like, Dad, these kids, like everybody got ADHD. And I've been
Mm-hmm.
thinking, even in my social work when I was working in CPS, and I would have kids that were, diagnosed with ADHD, and I would go do home visits or school visits, and their parents would take them off the meds for the summer, and they'd be crazy and bouncing off the walls at the house. And and I'm not saying that there aren't children who aren't legitimately suffering from this,
Right.
but
Right.
Mm-hmm.
some of what I saw as a social worker was They needed structure and discipline.
Right.
Mm.
Come on now.
Pop
Mm.
their little butt, tell them to sit down, and let's go on with
You're
the teaching
advocating
of this.
violence, sweet. No, I'm just
Whatever.
You're supposed to put them in timeout now.
Time out and pop them and then put them in timeout. We gonna
We
use
call
all
it
avenues.
we call it the calming corner.
Yeah,
Yeah, put them in the calming corner.
that's right. After you get slapped, there's one good time. Go
Oh,
calm down.
Lord.
I didn't say slapped in the face. You get slapped on the butt. Let me tell you, when I used to get my spankings, because I grew up in the country, and so I didn't have a calming corner. I got my whoopings, and you know what calmed me down after you done been beat down? You done get automatically tired and go to sleep.
Yeah.
Right. My calming corner was go to bed.
Go to bed.
What time it was. I was in bed.
But on a serious note, I know you watched it as well, and I would love to hear your professional take.
Oh,
on,
wow.
And I know it was. I mean, we can't go into all of it. There would be a second podcast,
Right.
But, you know, just highlighting some of the, at least that whole ADHD,
Right.
ADD diagnosis, and he spoke about teachers not having the patience and the grace and the wherewithal to even know how to deal with. So I would love to hear your thoughts about that as a professional.
Right. Well, I definitely do think that Dr. Umar has some very valid points.
Mm-hmm.
I actually worked in the school system in Rocky Mount for an entire school year.
Okay.
And the school, and one thing I want to know, he said that, children are segregated based upon these diagnoses, which I'm not disputing, but children are segregated, I believe, first and foremost, because they're Black.
Yeah.
Bumper diagnosis, we gonna separate you from white kids.
Yeah.
Because of what we see. And that was what happened at that school system. Now, my mother used to work at the same school in the 90s. Mm-hmm. The school, the community was an integrated community. In 2019, the school is pretty much 99.9% Black with probably 1 or 2 Hispanics.
What?
Wow.
Maybe one white kid.
Redistrict.
Exactly.
Rezoning? Did they
So
rezoning?
the way they zoned the school isolated these children, okay? And they got rid of, I think typically elementary is what, like K through 5 or K through 6?
Yeah, K through 5.
K through 5. Okay, so the school is now K through 2. Okay, so pretty much they have segregated these kids, okay, from this community into one school.
Wow.
Literally, about half of the children have a diagnosis.
Wow. Oh my God, they're only
Lord have
K
mercy.
through 2.
See, that's what I was, and it's only K
How
through
you got a diagnosis at kindergarten?
Come on. Them jokers just ain't got the patience to deal.
Now, see, that's what I was
big
brought
money.
into.
It's
But
diabolical.
thank you.
Yeah.
Think about it. That's what I was brought into the school to do, was to do what? Diagnose.
Whoa.
To diagnose and to also provide the mental health services. But one thing Dr. Umar said, you have to have a diagnosis in order to build.
Yeah.
We can't see you.
True.
We can't see you because you just, you having a problem with your mama.
Yeah.
Mom and daddy fussing.
Come on.
You have to have a diagnosis. Okay? So he's absolutely right about that. So when I say half of the school, and then there was a push to get them in. Okay?
Wow.
To get as many in as you possibly could. So that means I had to diagnose more and more kids. And I would say most of the kids who were in the program, were Black boys.
Wow.
Now, what I saw was not ADHD.
Mm.
What I saw was trauma.
Come on.
Come on.
Mm.
Aces.
Talk about it.
Yep.
There may have been one kid, a couple of kids who actually had a true ADHD or some other diagnosis.
Wow.
But I was going into their homes and helping them complete paperwork and Medicaid applications and truancy issues, not coming to school, and it was a lot. But most of it was trauma-based.
Wow.
Bouncing off the walls because, it's so many people packed into the house, they ain't got nowhere to sleep. And then mama's not there at night. So
yeah,
we watching TV, or dad is not there at night, or nobody's supervising. So I'm either watching TV all night or staying up all night. So I'm not resting.
Yeah.
And so then when you come to school, we have to make a pallet in the guidance counselor's office for you to get at least, 30 minutes after breakfast.
Wow.
And then they're bouncing off the walls for the rest of the day. Like, is it really ADHD or is it lack of rest?
Right.
My God.
And that's something that doesn't take, and that's something that doesn't take medication.
Yeah.
They just need to rest.
Kids respond differently than adults do to fatigue,
Yeah.
or hunger. They respond differently.
Wow.
So, I had one client there, defiant, would have outbursts, but my heart I knew that it was stuff going on at home. And I would ask this client, tell me what's going on at home. Do mom and daddy argue a lot? And he would just drop his head and, shake his head. Yeah. But if that's what you're seeing at home and how, the adults in your home and in your community respond to stress.
Come on.
With yelling, screaming, cussing, and throwing things. Well, how do you expect a child to come to school and behave when they seeing you act like that?
Come on here.
So Dr. Umar definitely has a point. Now, is childhood mental health disorders real? Yes. I have worked with, sure enough, severe mental disorders in children. But what I saw in the school system, most of them don't have a diagnosis. It's just poor socioeconomics.
Wow.
It's generational trauma or generation. Parents have mental health and substance abuse issues.
And I think it's just extra diabolical, Shameca, how they will zone. So they take an area that is a neighborhood full of trauma, and they put them all in one place together. So they can't get away from it in the neighborhood and home, and they can't get away from it because that same neighborhood, you just put all the traumatized babies in one spot. That's why this zoning mess, and I know we can't really get into the politics and the just, y'all, look, we all believers on this. This is spiritual and it's something diabolical behind a lot of this stuff. And that's why we thank God for the practical answers through counseling with someone like Miss Ricks and with just kind of making yourself aware.
And how he was. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Holly.
Oh, but the part where he was talking about how the medication that they prescribe is like one ingredient away from, what was it, heroin or crack or something?
Crack or something.
So then you're getting them starting to be drug addicts. And then the other thing on top of that is the ones that they don't get in the school system, they get in the prison system. Because that's the population that I work with. And I can't tell you how many that I see anxiety and depression. And of course, your depression in jail.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true.
But
It's
it's
not funny,
like,
but Jesus.
my God,
Yeah.
it's like, it seems like everybody, and I'm not saying some of them actually have that diagnosis, but I
Right.
feel like some stuff going on there that's
Mm.
over. So it's like, it's a business.
And I
Yeah.
think too,
Mhm.
like one of the things Dr. Umar was saying, and I've always had this theory. Now, granted, it's just been a theory. I haven't did extensive research, but I've always been very leery about children being on medication really early, because I've always felt like it was gateway. Like if you go throughout life having to take
To
a
depend
chemical
on something.
to keep you in a good calm place or to do whatever. And I don't have anything to substantiate this. I'm just saying in my brain, it just seemed like if you never know what it's like to cope without assistance, then you're always going to need some form of assistance, whether it's Ritalin to pot, crack, the heroin, to whatever.
Yeah.
So as a professional, Shameca, because Dr. Umar was advocating for talk therapy.
Right.
Talk
Mhm.
therapy doesn't diagnose with medications. Oh, it doesn't have a medical
Prescribe.
component to it, right?
Right. Right.
So, what are your thoughts about early diagnosis that results in children having medication, with the understanding that some kids just may need it?
Right, right. But think about this. When I was going through therapy requires you to do work. Okay.
Like Yama,
Yes,
do your work.
right.
Right.
Right. Therapy, yes, is a place to talk. But when you come into my office, yes, I'm going to let you talk. Yes, I'm going to let you vent. But at some point, I'm going to say, okay, now what you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Because it does no good. Okay, yes, talking about it, yes, getting that off of your chest helps. But when people come to see me, my goal and my purpose is change. Okay?
Yeah.
So it requires you to do work.
Yes.
But how many people want to do the work? I can take a pill and
Come on.
Yeah. It's the truth.
you can't rub it away. You can't wipe it away.
Oh my God.
I mean, this guy Sweet was talking about that. We was started singing
like
that
the
song.
other day.
Can't rub
Just
it
give it away.
Wipe it away.
Wipe it away. Ooh, if you know, you know.
Audience, we go way back, okay? That movie was what was it, the 5 Heartbeats?
No, Poetic Justice. Jason's lyrics. That's about Poetic Justice.
Right,
Jason's
right.
lyrics.
Yeah.
What's it, Jason's lyric?
It was
Okay.
Jason's lyric. He was on the corner.
It was an intro with the toothless man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He probably had a mental
ain't
health
Jason's
diagnosis.
lyric.
It's some substance issues.
Let me look that up.
It's
I
Jason's
know, right?
lyric.
We done watched about 1,000 movies together, y'all, okay?
Nah, it's Jason's lyric.
Okay. So that was a little part in the
I
film.
think I'm right.
No, that was Go Fast. Go Fast.
Go fast. Go fast. The 5 Heartbeats
Wrong movie.
on the corner.
Yeah. Woo.
But really though, you can't, let me pop a pill and but even right, but even the pill doesn't stop life.
Come on. Yeah.
Life is gonna throw something else at you that the pill is just not, a pill is not gonna solve your problem.
Yeah.
You have to do the self-work. So I have some people who come in, they're super motivated, they do the homework, they do the assignments, they're motivated, but then I have people who, just come in and just come in. So just like myself, I was able to come off, and this is not everybody's situation. Some people do have severe, persistent mental illness, and they will have to take medication for the rest of their life. But I was able to come off of my medication.
Wow, awesome.
because I had to do the work. I had to learn how to, once I got myself, my chemical imbalance straightened out, and a lot of it was due to, stress and all of this kind of stuff. But I did the work. I learned how to cope and use coping skills and make good choices and good decisions.
That's good. That's good, Shameca.
For my life. And I took back control and authority over the direction that I wanted my life to go. Most people feel powerless. They can't do anything about their life.
Yeah.
And it puts them even deeper into a depression because they don't feel like they can do anything about it.
Wow.
So can a lot of the mental health situations that I see be managed without medication? Yeah. But you got to do the work.
Got to do the work.
Wow.
That's a whole word right there.